This is how the Ukrainian wheat field usually sounds. And this is the sound of it now, in wartime. The Russians shell the fields, shells burst, setting fire to dry stubble or ripe wheat, and a fire starts. If wheat catches fire, the wall of fire reaches about 2 meters high and cannot be approached. Farmers have just to wait for everything to burn down. With the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Russian Federation is killing not only Ukrainians, but also millions of people far beyond the limits of hostilities, applying food blockade and using food as a weapon. My name is Catherine Litvinchova, and this is the second season of UA, The Day That We Survived podcast. In Season 1, we, as Urban Space Radio, together with dozens of volunteers, created 23 episodes for you about Ukrainians who have been holding Russia's invasion for 5 months already. We continue our work so that you stay updated on what is happening in Ukraine and, moreover, how Russia's war affects the world. You can support our work as an independent media and podcast platform on Patreon, via the link in description to this episode. Today we are going to talk about Ukrainian farmers and global food security. Ukraine is one of the largest exporters of wheat, sunflower oil and corn. Every 5th ton of Ukrainian wheat goes to bread baking in the countries of Middle East, Africa and Southeast Asia. In 2020, Ukrainian vegetables were exported to 95 countries of the world. Consumers of more than 100 countries ate Ukrainian fruits. Due to the Russian invasion, these volumes largely disappeared from the world market, which could not but affect the prices and availability of goods on the shelves of various countries around the world. Some politicians in the regions of the Middle East, Africa and Southeast Asia are already voicing scenarios of hunger riots caused by shortages and price rising. By the way, the price increase is something you might have already noticed. Prices have also increased in Ukraine. In particular, the price of fuel has doubled. The foreign exchange rate also increased. These, together with the closed ports, have a deadly effect on Ukrainian farmers. Mikhailo Kolesnik is the director of the Yahoo Bets agricultural enterprise, located in the center of Ukraine. Currently, he does not know whether he will sow winter wheat in September. It will depend on the resolution of the port issue.
We grow agricultural crops, corn, winter wheat and sunflower. We cultivate an area of around 1,850 hectares. This spring we were on a roll. Seeds, fertilizers and fuel were purchased and machinery was repaired. We had sown winter wheat before the war, but about 60% of the space still had to be sown. Now we have to sow winter wheat in September, but the price of our harvest this year is below zero. A ton of wheat costs 5.5 thousand hryvnias, and on the market it costs 4.5. We don't know how to get out of the situation. We can't sell, there's no price. We're trapped in a corner. Before, we transported everything to the port in Odessa and sold it to transnational companies. There was no problem with that. The price was normal, as was profitability. But now the demand exceeds supply. We have so much grain, but there's no way to export it. There's no price for it. Barges are not getting loaded. Some grain is getting out through the Dunai River, but it's very little. Ukraine produces more than it can consume. Therefore, we have this situation on the market. The price for mineral fertilizers is calculated in foreign currency, but we price our produce in hryvnia. So we operate at a loss and consider now whether we should sow wheat and rapeseed or not. As far as I know, Plenty of farmers in the Odessa region won't be sowing if nothing changes this month regarding the export of produce. We need the port to be working because the demand for grain is there. If we don't sow, the land will remain idle until next year without any problems, perhaps full of weeds. But it's okay. But people will lose their jobs. No harvest, no bread, no rent money for shareholders. They understand there's war, but still ask when we will pay rent for the shares. Costs have skyrocketed. Even though crop protection products are manufactured in Ukraine, ingredients still come from China and Europe. It's all in foreign currency. So a ton of fertilizer is counted in foreign currency. Superphosphates, a fertilizer made in Poland, requires 150 to 200 kilograms per hectare. Last year it cost 14,000 hryvnias, now it's 30. Diesel would cost 22 hryvnias per litre, now it's 57. It's 100% price increase on everything. Wheat cost 8,000 per tonne, now 4 to 5. Sunflower 22,000, now 10 per tonne.
The continuation of Russia's war on the territory of Ukraine threatens millions of people around the world with a global food crisis. Because not one Ukrainian harvest, but 3 at once may suffer. First, Ukrainian farmers cannot export the crops they harvested last year, because granaries are mainly situated in the occupied south and east of Ukraine. Moreover, Russia is blockading seaports in the Black and Azov Seas, which were the main export channels for Ukrainian agricultural products. Russia doesn't hesitate to even steal Ukrainian grain and bombs Ukrainian granaries. There are also problems with the second harvest, this year's one. Due to the increase of oil and gas prices, logistic problems, as well as because of the Russian shelling, it is physically impossible to carry out fieldwork. About 22% of all Ukrainian agricultural land is currently occupied by Russians, according to NASA Harvest satellite data. Some of the agricultural workers went to defend our country with weapons in hand, resulting in a shortage of agricultural workforce. And those who stayed often die in the fields of mines left by the Russians. Farmers who lost crops due to the shelling and fires or inability to export it safely will not be able to receive money and carry out the next sowing. Thus, the third harvest is under threat. Not only farmers suffer losses, but also fertilizer producers. Serhiy from Zaporizhia has currently lost all contact with his clients in the occupied territories. Here is what he said about his work today.
I completely lost the sales market for my products. The enterprise completely stopped because liquid fertilizers were produced specifically for the south of Ukraine, because there are constant droughts and there are many greenhouses where vegetables, fruits and berries grow. Now there is no one to sell all this, because for those who grow the same thing but further north, dry fertilizers are so suitable, which are cheaper than liquid ones. The current sales will not allow for the enterprise to be maintained.
Ukraine has planned a strategy to provide food for 1 billion people around the world by 2030. If the Russian Federation is not stopped, these plans will become impossible to carry out. At the same time, the number of people on the verge of starvation will increase by hundreds of millions every year. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is an aggression against the whole world. That is why Ukraine is making every effort to stop Russia. Our brave and dedicated agrarians, despite the martial law and constant bombardment, are already starting sowing campaigns where possible. Our courageous people use their country yards, parks, and even the roofs of high-rise buildings to grow vegetables, fruits, and herbs. Here is the story of Roman, a young farmer from Ternopil region, western Ukraine.
Hello, my name is Roman. I'm 26. I used to work as a project manager in culture sphere in Kyiv, but I came back to my country town, to my village where I was born, in western part of Ukraine. And since the beginning of the spring, I started to learn how to be a farmer, how to grow different fruits and vegetables in this region, and especially how to do it completely organic. When the war started, I was working as a volunteer coordinator, help somehow Ukrainian army troops and people in general in this situation which had happened with all of us. But after that I realized how can I be really helpful for the future, and the food was really the question, because we analyzed a lot with my friends what will happen next. It was like the beginning of war, and sure we know that it will be for years probably, and things would getting worse, especially with finances, especially logistics and other stuff, and the prices will get higher, and inflation, of course. And I realized that probably growing food, it will be the best what I can do for Ukraine and be involved as a citizen in this war. Yes, here I'm feeling that I could be more useful because I was born here. I have part of the land where I can grow food. This year it's not that much. I grow some amount of potato, cabbage, tomatoes, cucumbers. I'm doing that with my family. We all understand the reason why we have to do this. I was talking about generation memory, and I was thinking about the stories from my grandma, which told us often about famine, which was after Second World War, and probably that is why we just, on some basis of our minds, just started to doing that and realized that we have to do this and grow much more than we used, much more that we need.
Whether we can ensure not only Ukrainian but also international food security depends on real Ukrainians who plant victory gardens today. After all, more than 80% of fruit and vegetable production and more than 90% of potatoes in Ukraine are grown by households. When the Ukrainian military liberated the Snake Island, it opened a small gate for small ships which will now be able to take out Ukrainian grain more quickly and head to Romania and Bulgaria by the Danube ports. However, the Danube ports cannot fully replace the Black Sea ports, so now Ukraine does its best to unblock other main ports in the Black Sea. On the 22nd of July in Istanbul, Ukraine signed an agreement with Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar and UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres regarding the unblocking of exports from 3 ports: Chornomorsk, Odessa, and Pivdenny. The Russian Federation concluded a mirror agreement with Turkey and Guterres. Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu signed from Russia's side. The very next morning, the Russians attacked the seaport in Odessa with cruise missiles. The never-ending methods of terror. On the 1st of August, the first ship bound for Lebanon with 26,000 tons of Ukrainian corn left the Odessa port. And while the world is closely watching whether the agreement will work and whether the Ukrainian ship will reach its destination safely, Ukrainian farmers continue to harvest this year's harvest and prepare for the next season. Me, Catherine Litvinchova, was with you. Please share our podcast with your friends and support our project on Patreon. All links you can find in episode description below. Stay safe and hear you soon.